Hello, you're listening to UNC Science Friday. I'm your host, Abigail Hall, and today we will be discussing the viral disease known as Marburg hemorrhagic fever. Our guest is a UNC undergraduate scientist named Connor Young. Hey, Connor, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, Marburg hemorrhagic fever is a highly lethal pathogen with up to 90% fatality and no known treatments. But honestly, until now, I had never really heard of this disease. So, Connor, when did Marburg become known to the scientific community? When was it first heard about?
Yeah, so this happened in 1969 in Marburg, Germany. There were a group of scientists working on a polio vaccine, and in their research, they worked with rhesus monkeys. And so one day, some of their coworkers ended up in the hospital with this strange disease. And ultimately, 7 of them ended up dying out of the 30-something people that worked there. And this prompted a swift response by global epidemiologists because there was this unknown disease killing scientists that were working with monkeys. And what they had found was that there was a virus inside the monkeys that they were working on. And they deemed this virus as the Marburg hemorrhagic fever.
It's called that because I'm guessing, hemorrhagic fever is the classification, and Marburg is it was a town in Germany where the study was taking place?
Yes, Marburg, Germany.
Okay, gotcha. That sounds really serious, like something from a movie or a TV show. So what exactly does the virus do to the body that causes these people to so randomly become sick and die so quickly?
Yeah, so the virus is primarily going to affect 2 of your body systems, the immune system and your liver. And so when it targets the immune system, what it's going to do is it's going to infect your immune cells, which does one of 2 things. The first is going to suppress the immune response. That way your immune system has a harder time fighting against the virus. And the second thing that it's going to do is going to cause your immune cells to release these cytokines, or just chemical signals. And these cytokines are going to enter your bloodstream, where they're then going to affect your epithelial cells that line your blood vessels. And what happens when this occurs is it's going to break these bonds that hold your epithelial cells together. And what this does is it basically increases your vascular permeability. And so what that means is that it's basically just making your blood vessels leaky, and blood is able to seep out of your blood vessels a lot easier. And when the virus infects your hepatocytes or liver cells, it's going to do a similar thing. It's going to force your hepatocytes or liver cells to release these other proteins or molecules that are known as anticoagulant factors. And so what happens is it's basically just a natural blood thinner. So it's going to make your blood flow a lot easier, and it's going to make the blood seep out of the leaks that were created in the blood vessels a lot more easily. And so the anticoagulant properties, as well as the leaky blood vessels, is what gives rise to the hemorrhagic fever.
Okay, that makes sense. So the blood vessels are sort of weaker and start leaking out this blood, which is aided by the fact that it's thinner blood, so to speak, and the blood's just leaking in all these different places throughout the body. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, that does not sound like a good time. So how is the virus attacking these multiple systems, just the liver cells and the immune system cells? How does it decide which of these cells to attack?
Yeah, so you can think of this as a lock and key sort of mechanism. Cells all have these receptors which act as a kind of lock, and only certain molecules are allowed to bind to these receptors and unlock their pathways into the cell. And so what the virus does is it acts as a kind of a copy to these locks. And so it's able to bind to these receptors and unlock these pathways that allow it to inject its genetic material into the cell, and then have the cell do what the virus needs to do to replicate. And so what makes this virus special, though, is that it can bind to multiple cellular receptors. And this is what allows it to bind to the liver cells as well as the immune cells. And a lot of the times, other viruses tend to just bind to a single receptor, whereas Marburg has the ability to bind to multiple receptors.
Gotcha. Okay, so it can target multiple types of receptors, which is how it can enter both the liver and the immune system cells.
Yeah, that's one way, but yeah.
Okay. So I know I said earlier there are no known treatments for Marburg hemorrhagic fever, but are there any sorts of medications or treatments maybe in the works or that's currently being researched or looked into? As I'm guessing we're doing something to try to fight the virus. Is there anything that's we can look forward to in the future for maybe there being a treatment?
Yeah, so research today is focused on a few things. The first is a cellular receptor, the NPC1 receptor. A group of researchers actually found that certain antibodies or proteins that your immune system uses to fight off other pathogens can bind to this NPC1 receptor and block the virus from being able to replicate. And so what they had found was that by using antibodies to block the NPC1 receptor, they were able to neutralize the effectiveness of the virus and thus being able to fight off the pathogen. And another way that another area of research that people are going into has to do with ferrets. So one study had found that by inoculating ferrets with the virus and the concentration of the virus given to the ferrets had no effect on them. So they found that something in the ferrets' body was able to give them near 100% immunity to the virus, which was not the case for the other animals tested in the study. So like the mice and the hamsters, who all pretty much ended up dying. And then, so yeah, that's basically where ferrets come in.
So if we could all just magically turn into ferrets, none of us could be infected by Marburg, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, but I don't think that's really possible.
Yeah, that would that does not sound like it would be quite in the realm of possibility just yet. So if a treatment was to be made using these methods, where would it be implemented? I said earlier, I don't really know anyone who's been infected by this virus, or it hasn't come up in the news from what I've seen. Would the cure, if there was a treatment or cure, would it just sit on a shelf until the next people decided to go hang out with some monkeys? Like where would it, what would be done with these treatments should they come to pass?
Yeah, so these treatments are definitely going to be used in sub-Saharan Africa. This is because the virus originates in African bats, and just due to proximity, the virus spills over into the human population most frequently in Africa. The most recent outbreak was actually in 2014 in Angola, where approximately 300, 400 people died. So it would definitely have applicable purposes in these areas. And additionally to that, it can prove to be an effective treatment for Ebola because since they're both in the same filovirus family, the same routes and avenues that were used to develop the vaccine can also be applied to a potential Ebola vaccine. So that can have a lot of potential impacts.
Yeah, that would definitely be fantastic if those treatments were able to come to see the light someday and be able to be used around the world. So thank you so much for coming in today, Connor.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So that was UNC undergraduate scientist Connor Young on the subject of Marburg hemorrhagic fever. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to UNC Science Friday. This is Abigail Hall wishing you a great rest of your day.